This is an RNZ podcast.
Right, it is time for Midweek Mediawatch. Colin Peacock is our man this Wednesday. Joining me now from our studio in Wellington. Hello, Colin. Oh, Colin, have we got you?
Hello, Emil.
Oh, there we go. There
I'm
he
here.
is. Magnificent. How
Can
you
you
doing?
hear me? Is
I
it
can
me
hear you.
you're looking for?
It is you. It's you I'm looking for. It's you I found, and I'm thrilled, Colin. How are you?
Yeah, good, you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Looking forward to the discussion of the media and a wee surprise for you a bit later on as well. But let's begin by talking reality TV. New Zealand On Air rescuing reality TV.
A surprise, you say? Okay, I'm like a coiled spring now. This changes everything. Yeah, okay. All right, I'll play along. Yes, reality TV. Interesting. The latest funding round from New Zealand On Air, the government's broadcasting funding agency, includes some interesting and big money, relatively speaking, funding for, so it's part funding, broadcasters pay part of these shows, but The Traitors, NZ, hosted by Paul Henry for 3, that gets just over 1.4 million. Celebrity Treasure Island, 1.4. And both these programs, of course, have had several series on air already. And Shortland Street, this is the big one, up to, I think, 2.5 million, to. So effectively, it's also its eligibility for the screen production rebate has been approved. So basically a show that TVNZ was saying they might not have got on air, even after, 30 years? On TV3 and being a big rating show, could not survive without it. So New Zealand On Air's chief executive, Cameron Harlan, said the platforms have been clear, that's the TV channels, they can no longer afford to commercially fund local content they previously could. We are supporting content with demonstrated audience appeal and cultural relevance rather than waiting for the market to improve. We're taking action. So audience appeal and cultural relevance, obviously in the eye of the beholder or the audience. I don't know, Suzanne Paul on Celebrity Treasure Island. I don't know how relevant that is to me, but for other people, maybe. But look, shows that basically attracted advertisers and sponsors and were hits in the past, they're now saying can't be screened without the public purse.
They can't pay the bills unless the public purse sticks in some money. I mean, is this a departure to have shows like this funded? Is it unprecedented?
It's not normal, but it's not unprecedented. In fact, if you go all the way back to the distant murky past when I began on Mediawatch, I think one of the first things I remember doing, there's probably a lot of things I don't remember doing, but New Zealand On Air controversially put money into Pop Idol. In fact,
Right.
I think it was just for segments, and that was a big one. The head of New Zealand On Air at the time, who was a former sort of screen producers representative, had to kind of justify that, and she said, "Look, we'll have special segments with Waiata and so on that you would only get in New Zealand. Yes, it's a foreign format, but because that's part of this, these are proven commercial formats from overseas, really." And so, that was controversial at that time. We've seen it with other shows where to get the funding, a kind of cultural element was, do you remember the famous GC show?
Oh, how could I forget?
Yeah,
Yes.
so for one thing, it was these cultural elements about the ties that bind the so-called Mozzies or whatever, the Māori that migrate to the
Māori
Gold
live in
Coast,
Australia,
etc., and maintain their ties. And there was some of that, but it was also quite a lot of visual appeal going on in popular culture there, stuff. Yeah, so these shows have always, or this funding has always tried to cover several bases and are overlapping. But this is an unusual one for shows that clearly have been on air without public support, and now they say they need it. It's quite stark.
But I mean, the TV production sector is doing it really tough at the moment, and we do need a TV production sector to produce the kind of TV that you might idealise as deserving of public funding. And I suppose for broadcasters, they get some local content in return. In a sense, everybody wins.
Yeah, and of course people get trained, learn the craft.
Exactly.
And,
those skills don't die on the vine, right? Or leave to go overseas.
Yeah, the next Lee Tamahori or Taika Waititi, whatever might come out of it. You never know. The next Friday, the Concords, talent-wise, who knows? But I mean, this doesn't remind me that when all the way back, and I'm going back into history now, but when TVNZ had a charter 20 years ago under a Labour League government, they were kind of compensated to create content that would not be able to be made in a purely commercial environment. To make this public service stuff, they kind of charged TVNZ with producing and airing to the public for the public good, and they started spending it on dramas that they'd already been running, which is what reminds me of these, the likes of Traitors and Celebrity Treasure Island. There was shows called like Shark in the Park or something, with police dramas, where they used to produce like 20 episode-long seasons, huge long things. And I think when Tom Fruin, the founder of Mediawatch, was saying, what are you actually spending this money on? It was only then that they declared it and was saying, well, hang on, those shows were on before the Charter in this very commercial environment. So why now with this money? So, yeah, the justification of the spending on these shows has always been a little bit controversial. But, I mean, one point to make, I guess, is like it's what they're not funding. Because, remember, these arguments were made about Fair Go, about the Sunday program, the news and current affairs. Then the argument was, sorry, that's really expensive, can't do it.
Yeah.
Now it seems to be a different story. And over the years, a lot of production houses, a lot of the owners and senior executives have made very good livings. Some of those companies have been sold offshore for a lot of money. So it really is an industry out of which some people have done quite well, and now it's turned against it. Interesting that news and current affairs not deemed worthy of the same sort of support entirely. And I think Duncan Grieve, writing on the spin-off, says as we slip into an era when everything can be argued and everything argued can be funded, remember the shows we didn't save, ask whether the foundational mission of NZ On Air is better served by what we kept or what we threw away, which is a good way of putting it.
Well, I mean, maybe the response to that, though, is no one was watching those shows, you know, because the argument...
they were. Well, the Sunday show and that, they really were.
Yeah. And I suppose...
But there's a long tail to that stuff as well. People watched it on demand.
Totally.
You know, filled the archive. You could come back to those things when the issues recurred. That often happened. Yeah.
Well, the argument used to be, didn't it, that these reality shows that advertisers they get made and they get watched and they make money, and maybe that money is complemented by public funding to produce the culturally relevant shows that might have a much smaller audience but are important for New Zealand to produce. And New Zealand On Air might now be thinking, well, that model's gone to the dogs, but we do need to be justifying this public money being spent on producing TV, so maybe we'll just make shows that we know people are going to watch.
Yeah, or maybe that's where it's sort of retreated to, because you also see that, you think of the Public Habit, used to be a 6 to 7 p.m. news hour, and then across 2 and at one point 3 on prime time, used to be 3 7 p.m. current affairs shows. Now the appetite for that seems to have completely disappeared, along with the will to put the resources into it. So yeah, changing tastes, and of course streaming coming on board, all that stuff. TVNZ could argue that they do those things that didn't get the sufficient eyeballs. They're still doing them. They're just putting them on TVNZ Plus, and the audience that wants them can seek them out. But when the pool is limited for the public funding, remember the Film Commission also being rolled into the New Zealand On Air as well. Everything's getting a bit constricted, and the choices that are being made are getting really, really interesting. And it will be a question of like what the public really values. And if these shows don't rate, I wonder, what the response to that will be.
Is TVNZ or NZ On Air actually copying any flack over this funding of reality TV? Do people care?
Well, interestingly, this came out about a week ago, right? And there wasn't a lot of discussion. And it used to be that anything about popular TV shows would fill, page 5 or 7 of the paper. They have a story up there and pictures of whoever's involved, staple stuff. But the media have, of course, picked up on it. Here, for example, is Mike Hosking on his show, I think this is Friday last week, talking to the Screen Producers Association President Irene Gardner.
Are you telling me that you cannot put a television program on primetime TV2 and not sell advertising money around that covers its cost?
Not anymore.
No way.
Not anymore. No, I'm not lying. They cut about 50 million out of spending on local production last year across the 2 main channels. It's really desperate out there. The ad rev is just so low, and it's because of big tech, and it's gone completely unregulated, and it's incredibly tough.
So that was Irene Gardner's message, and that prompted Mike Hosking to write an opinion piece saying, linear TV really is in trouble if they can't get these popular shows on that we know can pull a crowd and find any way of doing it. But and this is an industry that keeps telling us it's worth $3 billion a year. I think that's the screen industry, possibly with the movies rolled into it as well. And that makes it look weak if you can't get that sort of stuff on the air. But interesting that Paul Henry is going to be hosting the show The Traitors while being on TVNZ's board.
On the board,
having turned up at the ACT conference saying linear TV is stuffed, and I told them all this, and the ACT people applauding and say, why would we put any public money into that? Now, it's all getting quite weird. But another response that was interesting, also on News Talk ZB, this is former Labour Cabinet Minister Stuart Nash appearing on the panel discussion The Huddle.
BNZ is losing, $50 million. Just give it up, fellas. I'm sure the government's got better things to spend its money on. When I read this, TVNZ funding reality TV.
It's New Zealand on air. It's New Zealand on air.
Well, New Zealand on air funding reality TV. Really? What about, I don't mind documentaries that find it hard to raise money in this sort of Karen, but reality TV, give me a break.
This was Stuart Nash. A Labour cabinet minister when he would have been around the table when discussions about TVNZ and RNZ maybe merging and where public funding should go. Okay, not the broadcasting minister and lots of other things that they have to deal with, but that's kind of disappointing. But it does show that I don't think people do discern that. Some don't realise TVNZ because it's state-owned but commercially funded and where this money goes. So, it will be interesting if the public do have a different expectation in tight times about where their money goes. There was a bit of a stink about Sunday and Fair Go going. People kind of got used to it, don't talk about it anymore, and yet these money being spent on these shows instead, doesn't seem to have been an issue last week or since, apart from when the media, who have their own particular interests and sensitivities, bring it up.
Flying under the radar. Can I just ask you very quickly before we move on, Colin? Did you? I didn't really watch Celebrity Treasure Island. I watched a bit of it, but I did watch The Traitors. Did you watch it?
No.
All right. Well, because I'll tell you right now. I thought the season of The Traitors, the most recent season of The Traitors, I thought it was terrific. I really thought it was excellent reality TV, and I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I did think it was really good.
I think it suffered a little bit because people said that the British version, which was also on air around about the same time, was better.
Also very good, but
Yeah, but that's fair enough. I mean, different taste. But for example, with Celebrity Treasure, I called it a foreign format. I think the article on the spin-off that celebrates is actually, no, that's a New Zealand thing. I think it's because like the British created, what is it? I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. I think it's a variant of that. But they make the argument that, there's Te Reo on it, there's local comedians, there is New Zealand culture expressed, so it's not outlandish to say, there's cultural relevance in it. It's not for me. Should the public purse be funding it? I don't know, when it's clearly a show that ought to be able to attract at least some level of sponsorship. People can argue that round the houses, but it's the opportunity cost, right? It's what's not being made and what was let go because they said it couldn't be done and yet can be done for these shows.
Yeah, totally fair point. All right, let's turn the microscope on ourselves, shall we, Colin? And Morning Report has sounded a bit different since Monday. Yeah,
a bit different, but not a lot. So they've had a few tweaks. So they're doing a kind of smoother segue between First Up and Morning Report, about 3 minutes too. They've Nathan and Morning Report hosts handing the show over. Got the musical sting they're throwing in there to kind of punctuate the items, maybe ramping up the speed a bit. Susan Edmonds has been on every day this week talking about money issues. I think they've identified that as a winner. They're going to have like the world news wrap, rural news, business bulletins, much more conversational, and new features like 2 MPs going head to head each week. So that's Wednesday morning. Today they had Nicola Willis and Carmel Cepoloni. The first one of those. They're going to have a Friday sports panel, a weekly slot with a CEO. So these are all new tweaks. I mean, by and large, if you listen to all 3 hours, it'll feel like the same sort of experience. But they've definitely decided to just tweak it and up the pace a bit.
What's the justification?
Well, they've been losing audience, as you would have heard in the ratings. Also, they've been Martin Gibson, the editor, is in the process of leaving after editing it since I think 1999. So there's going to be change. They're going to restructure how they staff and produce it. There's going to be more of an Auckland presence and input into it. They've also had Richard Sutherland, the former news head, back in to do a kind of review. So some of what he had to tell them is very likely to be reflected in the little changes that they've made. The official line is the changes were driven by the need to improve the listening experience, and the digital team is looking at ways to exploit new radio features to drive audience overall. So that's clearly something else. They want to get stuff out on social media channels and online and try and reach the audience that overlaps with the radio audience and the audience that doesn't listen to the radio at all where possible.
Do you suspect that perhaps there is some inspiration being provided by Morning Report's biggest rival?
The Mike Hosking Breakfast on ZB, which has been gaining audience while Morning Report has not. Yeah, that's true. Like the Wednesday MP head-to-head thing, they do that. They have...
although TVNZ does, like a lot of morning shows do, right?
Oh, they do, but it's the same day, right? And really, exactly, they have Jenny Anderson and Mark Mitchell. They have, like, frequently on the Mike Hosking Breakfast, there'll be 8 a.m. sports. There's 8 a.m. sports panels, I think, on Monday. But they also have sports-related chat, sometimes long interviews straight up after the news with someone like, I don't know, Scott Dixon, or I've heard Eliza McCartney interviewed, no lead news story at all at 8 sometimes. Yeah, the interesting thing is, if you listen to a large swathe of the show, of either show, one thing that's different is the Mike Hosking breakfast is about an hour 50.
Over a 3-hour period.
Yeah, when you take out all the ads,
Right.
even with the bulletins. And sometimes, if you look at a transcript, which only a nerd would do, but they do exist, there's often very little news, not so much reporting from around the country when there's, the extreme weather stuff that was hitting Nelson. They kind of didn't do it. They don't have reporters there. They might talk to the Minister of Civil Defence, Mark Mitchell, about it. But it's a very different experience. And a lot of that core reporting stuff, regional content and so on, is still in Morning Report that you wouldn't get on News Talk ZB or any other talk radio.
Speaking of morning, Colin, I'm in mourning because we're losing someone from our wonderful Midweek Mediawatch team, aren't we?
Yeah, that's happening.
Hayden Donnell. He's leaving us.
He's walking away. It's funny, it's really weird when you read news stories about this sort of thing.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's reported by the Herald's Media and so. But I thought the one that we both enjoyed was Stop Press, the media industry website. They kind of mashed it together in a bulletin or other stuff. It said when, the Coldplay Gate scandal first broke, says the writer, I wasn't sure. I didn't know what this company astronomer was. And then I read about, Gwyneth Paltrow getting hired as the company's temporary spokesperson for a stunt, and this, and he said, meanwhile, the spin-off has announced the appointment of Hayden Donnell. He will leave RNZ's media, as if the two things were connected, which prompted Hayden himself to say, am I marginally less famous than Gwyneth Paltrow? And I said,
take that to the bank.
Gwyneth Paltrow's best-known days are probably past anyway, so I don't know if that's a yardstick.
I'll miss Hayden dreadfully. Will you, Colin?
Too early to tell. He's still here for a start. You'll be talking to him next week if he's still deigning to turn up. But yeah, he's already spreading himself around the spin-off. You'll be reading some of his stuff there, and there'll be more of that in the future as he's going full-time with them. But he was also, I note, on NZME's podcast called Why Do You Parent Like That this week. And he was saying this, and it's the podcast hosted by his own sister-in-law, which possibly explains the tone, but this is how he described himself.
I know nothing. I just want to put that disclaimer out there. I am an idiot.
Yeah, they already know that by now, Hayden. It's fine, don't worry.
Thank goodness. I've made
We've been talking for half an hour. They know.
This is a nice dynamic. Do you call your other guests an idiot, or is it that's just a little thing for
just
family
you.
members?
It's just for you.
Okay, sweet.
Why do you parent like that?
He accused her of calling him an idiot. He said he was an idiot. Come on, the blame shifting.
Poor media literacy.
Yeah,
from
those are his own words.
I agree. Yeah,
no further comment to make. Take it up with them next week.
Good on you for holding his feet to the fire. Finally tonight, Colin, you have talked recently on Mediawatch about a theme that you have seen across our media. I think it began with Mike Hosking. You were talking about Mike Hosking criticising the amount of te reo in the broader news, and then moments later starting to use words like fracas and lingua franca on his program.
I think it was Hayden that first picked up on that. I picked up the French ball and ran with it. Yeah.
And then you were talking about Jamie Wall's French accent when he read some unkind words written about Dunedin by a French rugby journalist. And then you were coming after me for doing the same sans accent. No, it's okay, Colin. It's okay. I bear no grudge. I bear no grudge.
Okay.
But let me read you a piece of correspondence I received earlier this week from Ian. Emile, I've been greatly enjoying the unfolding discussion of the Frenchification of New Zealand media during Midweek Mediawatch. Given it's Colin this week, I would like to draw your attention to episode 3 of the RNZ podcast, the excellent RNZ podcast, Kelly Tarleton's Final Treasure Hunt. I could be wrong, Ian says, but I'm almost certain that the episode features Colin Peacock getting his Pepe Le Pew on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the merits of this turn as an 18th century French sailor. Now, Colin, should we have a listen to this?
It's your show.
It's your 19th of December, 1769, the crew of the Jean Baptiste were welcomed ashore. Here's how one of the ship's officers, Potier L'Homme, described it.
All the people were scattered here and there on the hills and the shore, and no doubt were doing honor to the new arrivals by waving things constantly to one side, as though to create a breeze. Some had long-haired skin cloaks, others bunches of grass. This ceremony must have been...
Monsieur Peacock, bonjour, comment ça va?
Ça va bien? That's Jamie Wall, isn't it? I think that was real good.
I have to say, I thought it was quite good too, Colin. We had to dig around for that audio because a lot of the things that you're saying in that episode are pretty nasty.
Oh, I know. Yes, I had to be extremely. I have to be extremely racist as well as.
You do, yeah.
Perhaps I sounded more racist than actually French, which has probably got the balance wrong there. But
no, I thought
the tragedy of this. I think my sister, who lives in France, listens to this presumably as the podcast, and she'll hear this, and she does not yet know about that podcast. So I think I'm now officially for it.